Okay, thank you so much, guys, for joining me for another installment of Chapter by Chapter. We didn't have one last week Sunday because I had an IG live on Monday that was focusing on the book, so I didn't want to have two back-to-back days of having the same type of conversations. So today we are back. For those of you who are new, we get together every Sunday at 6 p.m. and we chat about my book, We Are the Ones We Need, The War on Black Professionals in Corporate South Africa. I read excerpts from the book going chapter by chapter. And then we discuss some of the themes that come through, some of the experiences that you guys have had. And we try to get a better understanding of the environments that we're in and, what we have the power to begin to change and how we can begin to change that. So we have a lot of really beautiful, engaging, honest and raw conversations about where we're at, what we need to do, and really just exploring the possibilities. But also there's a lot of venting that happens. It's been great to have this community because we've been able to build a safe space where everybody really feels comfortable enough to be able to share whatever it is that's on their mind, where people can share their experiences. And we are all just part of a conversation without judgment, without fear, and with open hearts and minds. So thank you so much for contributing towards the creation of such a beautiful community. So today we are kicking off chapter 7, which is called Know Thy Enemy. So we've covered so far in the book in the previous 6 chapters, my journey from being a student to being, a young mom, to kicking off my career within corporate and some of my experiences around that. Chapter 6 is where we really got into the beginning of the experiences that led to what is now this book. And we focused a lot on the interactions, the meetings, conversations that I had with my line manager, who was a horrendous human being. And so today we're going to get a little deeper into chapter 7, which looks at all of the various players that were part of her strategy to try and get rid of me through constructive dismissal. So yeah, if you have a copy of the book, you can read with me. I'll be starting from page 103. If you would like a copy of the book, you can visit my website, sihlebalani.com. Go into a tab for books, and if you scroll to the bottom, there's links that you can click to depending on which distributor you prefer, and you can order like that. I don't keep any stock of the books myself. Hi, Melissa. Zigizai, hi. Hi, Matwing. Hey, Klompo. Long time. Hey, Pony Noah. Okay, let's get into it. Seeing that I was under attack, I had to start thinking about how to tackle the beast in front of me. I set out to meet with some of Amanda's sources of feedback to better understand if this feedback was genuine or an elaborately engineered scheme intended to leave me without a job and without professional credibility. I started with Elliot Zimmerman. Elliot had a senior media role in a different area of the business. He had years of experience, rubbed people the wrong way, said whatever he wanted to say, and that was it. He had the kind of confidence black professionals dared not have, because if I had behaved the way he did, I would have been fired. My predecessor reported to him, so when I took up the role, he had promised to provide support as I acclimatized into the new space. I gave Elliot a call to chat about the feedback Amanda said he had given about my performance, and he agreed to meet. I said to him, I had a chat to Amanda, and she had said that you had given some feedback to her on my performance, so I wanted to touch base on that. And he said, okay. So I gave her some positive stuff, and I gave her some areas that could potentially be improved on. So which do you want first? So I said, anyone is fine. And he said, let's save the good for last. Okay. I think my one was just the whole ownership of your portfolio and your need to take ownership of it. in terms of, being more interactive with like the broader team. I get the sense that, yeah, you're not involving the right people at the right levels. So I'll give you like a stupid example. It was just like the pricing thing when you had that discussion. I think it would have been really useful if you had someone like Elizabeth there or someone like myself there. Just, there's a lot more of ideas that can get spread around. So I said, I had initially asked Ahmed because he sent us an email asking to meet on Wednesday, late Wednesday afternoon, which I saw yesterday morning. I went back to him and said we can meet in the afternoon at like around 3 because my thinking was it would give us time to sort of gather everyone so that we can all be available. But then he just kept saying, please, I really need to talk to you about it now. Can we just talk about it now? So then I said, fine, we'll talk about it. But then I'm going to go back and chat to Elizabeth and Elliot and we'll all share our thoughts. And then I'll come back to you with an idea, which is then the process that I followed. So in that instance, it really wasn't. And he said, oh no, sure, but it's my example. But there are others. And then I also think, if I just compare it to, let's say, CIB, nothing leaves the bank. Let's say Haley puts something together and there is she likes it, business likes it, whatever, however she wants to process it. But just to get the other internal team members to go over it and see, what do you think? Because she doesn't get a view of, let's say, PBB group or those sorts of things, I think it's important that Lance and I know beforehand, this is what needs to happen. This is what's going out so that we're not caught by surprise, like the IBM thing or, that sort of thing. As I would have things like stuff to say about the release, about how it was written, and I think that input would have been quite useful in terms of that. I think that you've got to bring in a bit more of your colleagues and not just rely on agency to actually produce, if you know what I mean, Hi, cross your eyes over this. What do you think? Our collective team is very strong. I think we've got to utilize more of our colleagues with these sorts of things. We'll just ignore the fact that no one in the broader media team shared any of their releases with me. So I said, okay, that process. Stuff like media queries, I generally bounce off you and Lance anyway. But we've never really done the press release sharing thing from a retail perspective. And it has never been something that we've had a conversation around having. And he said, right. In the beginning, when you first came on board, we did. But anyway, we did. And look, it's not a big deal, but I think that just utilize the actual strengths. I think you should pull in more of your colleagues. I don't send out a thing without 1 or 2 of my colleagues having a look at it. It gives you comfort that you want, but it also gives everybody a picture of what's going on a day-to-day basis. So, I've got a view of what's happening in CIB is sending something out this week, but to the same people, one of us must hold off or try different journals or those sort of things. I think this is essentially a problem with structure. So I said, Elizabeth sends out every week a list of press releases that goes out. And it essentially serves that purpose, that you also have a view of what it is that we are going to be sending out. And then he says, but not actually the content. Elliot was right. When I first started in the role, I emailed him all my content before it went out so that he could cast an eye. It wasn't long before all my releases just sat in his mailbox, unread, day after day. Eventually, it started affecting my timelines and I grew wary of chasing him on top of everything else I needed to do. So I stopped. I kept him updated on what was going out and left it to him to request the content if he was interested in any particular piece of content. He never did. He was also included in my weekly meetings with agency for one main purpose. Don't accuse me of not keeping you in the loop with what's happening in my space. He often didn't attend the meetings, didn't request to be brought up to speed on what he'd missed, and certainly never apologized for being a no-show. But ke, as collab. So I said, are there any instances maybe where something in my space has gone out that has not been tied in accurately with the bank's view or perspective? And he said, I'm serious, I don't know of any. On the other hand, and I have been accused of this a lot, is that you wear your heart on your sleeve. So when you're irritated, you show it. When you're disinterested, you show it. When you're quite expressive, you can see when you're not interested or connected. If I'm looking irritated and irritable, you're not going to want to engage with me. So you'll engage with something else as you go. How does this fit into the conversation that we're having, by the way? So I said to him, do you have any examples that you can share? And he said, no, it's a general thing. It's a general thing. You've got expertise, and I think that you should speak up and give your opinion. And you should actually be leading and not be led by the agency or someone like myself or any other colleagues. I think you should be more assertive in your view or your expectation of a matter, like constructive stuff. And I think that in meetings, you are very quiet. And I hate to feel when I'm leading meetings like, oh, fuck, I've probably railroaded Sitla into doing something that she didn't want to do or something that you didn't think was right or whatever. And I wish she had challenged me on something. You know, and I think you've got a lot of insights to share. I think you should share them. People actually want to listen to you. And I don't want to feel like a bully or like I've blocked you from saying something, you know. I was never quite sure how Elliot knew I had expertise and a lot of insights to share, if by his own account, I never said anything. But ke, as call up. I said to him, I have lots of opinions about a lot of things that I share with lots of people, and sometimes stakeholders are happy, and sometimes they disagree with me. But I always do have something to say. But also, if I agree with something, I don't see a need to add or take away or whatever the story is. I don't believe that in everything that I do, I'm always thinking of what? I don't see a need to add or take away or whatever the story is. I believe that in everything that I do, I'm always thinking of what is the best thing to do for the bank, regardless of whether that's the way we've always done it or not. I'm always thinking, how can we do it better? How can we do it differently? Yes, I understand that we've always been doing it, but if it's not achieving the results that we want, and he says, take that feedback as a gift and don't see it as something personal. It's a gift. And that's what the process does. It allows you to step out of it and see from a different perspective, because that is how that person experiences you. Laugh out loud. And he added, you know, or the interaction with you. So you're always hiding behind the PC. For those of you who've been on this chapter by chapter journey, you know from chapter 6, the thing about hiding behind the computer and the iPad. So by now you're starting to see the same types of language, the same types of comments coming through, right? What a coinky dink. You know, or the interaction with you. So if you're always hiding behind the PC, the iPad and whatnot, and you're busy with something or something else, you may not be, I don't know, but my perception is you have left whatever it is we are chatting about and you're busy with something else. Do you understand that it is a fair assumption to actually make? So I said, is that still part of your feedback, that I hide behind my computer? Yeah. And that goes to like almost the feeling of disengagement and disinterest. So I said, okay. So in pretty much every meeting we go to, everyone has a computer. And he says, yeah. And I said, everyone is sitting there having conversations or taking notes or whatever the story is. And he says, then, like I said, this is the perception that I have of you. Whether everyone sticks their nose in the same way or whatever, okay, this is my perception. Okay, this is how I feel, okay? And it's not a personal assault on you, okay? So I said, I'm not saying it is. And he said, no, no, no. When I'm sitting here and there's a conversation going on and you're constantly sitting on it. And I said, I'm not constantly sitting on it. I mean, and he said, okay, look, if it's just me, then it's fine. Then it's just me. At this point, Elliot was mad. Big mad. His face had turned into a bright crimson and he kept shifting uncomfortably in his seat. He was fidgety and I could see that it was taking everything in him to not get up and walk out of that room. And so I did what any other normal person would do. I carried on with my questions. I said to him, I just am actually quite surprised to have that feedback because, for starters, we as a media team are always on the phone and computers, and that's just how we are. There are so many instances where we are all in meeting and we are on computers because you never know what's going to come in, you know? What's going to be urgent. So it's either you're casting your eye on emails or jotting down notes, for instance, of stuff that you need to follow up on. And I don't believe that there would be an assumption that I'm doing something else when that assumption is not made on everybody else who's got their computers out. So I'm just trying to understand what that's based on, as I need to understand. And he said, it's my perception because you're very busy on it, always, all the time. So I said, okay, what else? And he said, nothing else really. And I said, what are the positives? The positives are when you are interested in something, when you're really interested, then you are going. I think that's cool. Like the interesting thing, like the techie stuff really gets you. Remember, same thing as Amanda, tech stuff, the digital stuff. Same script, different cast. I think that you understand it, and I think that especially when you have events or functions, I think that you're coming into your own when you do those. I think that's really cool. Okay, anything else? Nice handbag. But I think I don't know the reason. Are you wanting to get my opinion for personal development, or are you wanting, what's this conversation about? So I said, Amanda gave me this feedback and she suggested that I have a chat to you to unpack, as obviously I've got my own questions that she couldn't answer. So he said, okay, look, I just think that, I would like to feel more like a team with you, like be partners and actually help to make you feel better. I think at the moment it feels like there is a wall that has been built, whether it is myself or you or the structure or whatever. I can't blame anyone for it. But I think we should actually try and engage a bit more on the day-to-day things. So I said, the other feedback that Amanda gave me was that you don't involve me in anything or any crisis because you don't trust me. And he said, I don't think it was a crisis. I think it was a general comment around, like, if I were to leave the office, for instance, I would be okay with someone else being my out of office, but I don't think I would be comfortable with you looking after my portfolio if I was away. So that could be a function of a lot of things. Like, you haven't been here long enough and I haven't been that involved in like the press releases to know and understand what you were doing. I think that's where this comes from. So I said, okay. But did you explain this context to Amanda? And he said, I don't know, it was a cup of coffee, I don't know. And I said, I'm asking these questions because, and he interrupted me and said, no, sure, I understand it. I think that's my context. And I think that, I don't know. I get a sense, I have to be honest with you. I can't put my finger on it. Maybe it's an emotional thing that I know our other colleagues are 100% for the bank. And personally, I don't think you are 100% for the bank. Again, my sense of it. So I said, what is that based on? And he said, again, just your lack of wanting to engage with people, the broader team. It feels like you've taken this and you want to make this just yours. And I think that that's where that comes from. I think we've discussed this already, the sharing of information. Elliot had previously committed to being a greater support structure for me because he said he understood that my area of the business was complex and high volume, and certainly the most intense. I asked him if he felt that he had lived up to his promise. And he said, I don't feel like I was taken up on that offer. Again, on the sharing and those sorts of things. So I can't ask you, when are you having meetings with agriculture or agency this? There has been none of that sharing from your side. Do you understand what I'm saying? Again, none of the releases, and I've asked. So I've said, all of the meetings you've asked to be involved in, you were sent invites to all of those. Elliot, honestly. And he said, Sihle, can I be honest with you now? I don't know what this is. I don't know what you're trying to achieve. I think I've come here in good faith or good nature and happy to chat to you. And I'm telling you, those are my perceptions. This is what we agreed. If you want to start with this, in April, we spoke about that. I don't know what you're doing here. So I said, I need to just clarify something, because this feedback that you've given is based on what you've experienced over the time in which I've been part of this team. And this feedback is contributing towards how my performance is going to be reviewed. And he said, okay. And I said, so I'm not going to skirt over issues. I'm not going to not ask about issues I want to ask, because I do have a right to ask them. And he said, no, sure. So I said, no, it varies. I need to also talk about the whole crisis communications management process and how it works, because the whole 2-day outage thing, we spoke about it with agency and we agreed there needs to be a better way to communicate. And he said, yes. A crisis will always bring to the surface issues that lie beneath the surface. One of the biggest challenges I faced in the bank environment was access. Nobody was open to even just the mere idea of me having a seat at the table. I understood that crisis presented Elliot with his opportunities to shine, so he had a propensity to, for lack of a better word, hoard the relevant information, placing him as the comprehensive source and the saver of the day, the glue. When we were hit by a major crisis, Elliot had access to all the information, but would not open the door for myself nor the agency, and it got messy. What could have been a well-managed and seamless crisis management process actually led to a chair-pushing, 5-to-punch-you-in-the-face cussing blowout between him and one of the directors from the agency. I glanced over at Elizabeth, then back at these two men with shock and disappointment. The reality, ego came before what's best for the organization, and the organization suffered for it. I raised another issue with Elliot. I was struggling to be added to the crisis WhatsApp group for my business unit. I was being sent from pillar to post and had no idea who to talk to about it. He simply said, "You're not on? Just ask Sandra to add you." Well, knock me over with a feather, why don't you? The head of my department, my original line manager in this business unit, is the one running the crisis WhatsApp group, and she never included me. All the times I would mention to her that I was trying to establish who managed these groups so that I'd be included, and she just kept quiet. So I said to Elliot, the issue of direct request will be going from yourself to Elizabeth, and I'm not in the loop. And he said, what do you mean direct request? And I said, for instance, briefs. The most recent one I can think of, top of my head. After we had the Ask Africa meeting with Sandra, then you briefed into Elizabeth to put together a plan. So she called me to say, I'm trying to keep you in the loop. This is what Elliot has briefed in. And she sent an email. And then I went back and said, actually, the content to this was this. These are the points that are not included. Elliot says, okay. So I said, I feel like we need to close the loop better so that we consolidate before we go to the agency. And he says, okay. And I said, so that we take out the need of Elizabeth having to feel like a link for us. And he says, no, sure, fair point. And I said, I'm happy to share stuff with you going forward, but I obviously need to flag that there's a lot of stuff that comes out of my space. The volumes are exceptionally high, and I need to also get a commitment to turn around times because I'm always pressed for time. For sure. When we walked out of that room, Elliot's discomfort was palpable. As he flicked his hair from his forehead, lips pursed till they lost color, he speed walked to the escalators in his dark, oversized suit and disappeared from my eye line. I immediately called my mom and relayed the story. As I listened to myself speak, it felt as though I was watching someone else. This was someone else's story. It couldn't possibly be happening to me. It can't be real. The idea that people will scheme to threaten someone's livelihood and damage careers and reputations was chimerical. After the meeting with Elliot, I asked Amanda to chat to Sandra about adding me to the WhatsApp group. It still never happened. I had remained cool, calm, and collected during my conversation with Elliot. But all I really wanted to do at this point was climb into bed, curl up into the fetal position, and cry myself to sleep. Every day, my truth fought against their lies. I poured everything I had into my job. I couldn't allow any slip-ups. I was barely sleeping, and I was juggling all of it with studying my MBA, completing assignments, and studying for exams. I had enrolled to study an MBA because I wanted to be able to do more within my chosen field of communications. I wanted to get a better understanding of business and operations and risk management so that I could elevate my communication strategies and broaden my capacity to preempt potential risks. I've always believed that to be truly successful in my career, I must always be learning and growing and exposing myself to topics and industries that I didn't know much about. I yearn for new information because it always sparks new ideas and perspectives. I was juggling work, classes in the evening, 4 days a week, getting home at 11 p.m., sitting in my bed, pulling out my computer, and doing more work because there were never going to be enough hours in the day to get my work done. And Amanda was going to get me fired if I made any mistakes. I couldn't take that risk. I even felt so guilty when I needed to take time off to write my exams because I knew my work wasn't being done. I was getting home long after my daughter had gone to sleep. On weekends, I was so exhausted, but I worked anyway. My daughter would get maybe 3 hours of my time on Saturdays and another 3 hours on Sundays, and then I'd be back on my laptop. I was maybe later, mom. And later hardly ever came. I wasn't eating properly. I drank sugarless coffee like it was an IV drip, and I was on an emotional precipice. I disconnected from my social world and I barely recognized myself. I had no joy. I had no peace. I couldn't breathe. Triggered am I? Let me catch up on your comments. Tompa, don't worry, this will be saved. Wait for the ownership chat, right? How many times has this come through? You're not owning it, right? But then, same person turns around and says, you're not involving us enough, you are owning it too much, and we don't feel like we have a part of it anymore. Nifunani, kahle kahle, what must happen? This is the same person who would send stuff to for him to cast an eye over so that he knows what we're doing and what we're sending out, and he would never do it. He would never read it. He would never respond. He never came to meetings. But I'm the one that doesn't include him. Never mind the fact that I never knew what was happening in CIB. I never knew what was happening in group because they didn't tell me. But I am the problem. It's so nice. It absolutely is their go-to when they want to get rid of a black professional. You're not owning it. Oh my gosh. Because they know the system's already in place that will never see a black person own any project. You know it. Santa says he's not very helpful and actually on the same page with Amanda. And this was exactly why. So when Amanda was giving me the feedback, I kept pushing on who said that? Who said that? Who said that? Because I wanted, and the other thing was, on top of saying who said that, I said, what was the context for them complaining about this issue? What context did they share? She'd be like, I don't know what the context is. They just said they're not happy with you. I mean, what kind of line manager is that, who does that? Anyway, so eventually, because I kept pressurizing her with those types of questions, she then had to say, just go and speak to them directly. You can speak to Elliot. I was like, sharp. So that's how I got my in, because otherwise he would have just avoided me, because that's how they roll. And I knew that because I understood the kind of person that he is, I knew that he was going to crack at the seams. And so I was able to go into that meeting with Elliot and be completely calm and ask my questions in a very calm way. Because for his type of personality, I knew that that would piss him off. Because he hates being cornered, he hates being challenged. Worse still if you do it and you're calm and you're not rising to his emotional level. I knew. Devon San says they taste your sanity and make you question yourself. Yep, always. Always. Hey Oli, better late than never. Hey Miss Manzi. Patsy says he was definitely in the same WhatsApp group with Amanda for sure. Yeah, Atlanta, that's exactly how I felt. Sneh says, ugh, I hate that so much. Take it as a gift. This is just my feedback. Just take it on board and use that to grow, to develop, to improve. It's not a personal attack. I'm doing this because I care. Bitch, fuck out of here. I definitely had all the minions gunning for you. Yeah, I definitely did. This is not constructive feedback. What a gift this was. Absolutely, Ntanta. Oli says, today I had a drink. I might just say the wrong thing. Forgive me in advance. Bring it up. This is a safe space. Okay? We are together in this. I can feel your emotions when you read Elliot. This is the first time I have read my book out loud, right? And actually, it was quite thrilling to read Elliot because that's literally how he spoke. He was huffing and puffing. He was all swole up in the chest. He was so upset. He kept... Whereas he was a smoker. I don't know if he still smokes. He was a smoker. So it was all just... He was just... A lot was happening with him. And I was just sitting there like... Tell me more. It was actually quite thrilling. It sucked. Please understand. The experience sucked. But seeing him that uncomfortable, being called out on his shit, was pretty freaking liberating for me in that instance. And then after the meeting ended, reality came back. And I remembered, shit, I'm still in this mess. Yep, he legit said nice handbag. Like, that's how disrespectful he is. Like, like they did not see me, like literally. Hoarding information. It's such an interesting thing because when I started looking after media relations for personal business banking in South Africa. I joined as a team of one, and I literally just had to figure it out myself. And Elliot is media relations and group, and he was a level senior than me. So I was a 12, he was a 13. And I think he was a former journalist or something like that. And I literally, because I have a PR, marketing, comms background, I was able to just have a look at what's happening, what's working, what's not working, and what needs to happen going forward. And so I was able to just run with it from the get-go. But then that made them uncomfortable. And so because they started being uncomfortable about that and the possibility of me shining in this role, Elliot felt that he was now losing the hold that he had, because every time something major would happen, it'd be like, oh, somebody call Elliot, oh, somebody get Elliot, and now I'm trying to create a space that does not require Elliot, because hello, I'm here, I'm handling it. And so Elliot would just not share information, because obviously he'd been at the bank longer. He knew more people. He was in more WhatsApp groups because he sits at a group level. And so if there's a crisis, he would find out about it before me without a doubt. But as somebody who sits within group, his responsibility was to say to me, Sihle, this is what I need to flag to you. Please find out what's happening, investigate, handle it, whatever. He never did. The PR agency would phone me and say, have you heard that this is happening? Oh, we just got a call from Elliot. He says he needs us to assist with, and I'd be like, what? Hey, guys. Yeah. You're what you need. Yeah, there. Absolutely. Amanda just had to be an Amanda for sure. Oh, someone cutting onions. Why am I crying? Yo, guys. I'm actually surprised I still even have tears, because I cried so much during this period. It was a good year. A good year. From July 2014 to... it was more than a year actually, to around August 2015 of just fighting. Crazy. Blossom says the sad part is that nothing has changed. If I had to be myself in the workplace, I would be declared psychotic and probably get fired. We constantly have to put the brakes on. Until when though? Absolutely, absolutely. And the thing is, under normal circumstances, that's frustrating as a human being, right? To have to be policed all the time, to be policed in terms of how you show up, to policed in terms of your tone, to be policed in terms of how you express yourself in the workplace. But then more so when you start to see that it's okay for some people to be expressive because they're white or because they're men, and it's not okay for you to be expressive if you're black or if you're a black woman. So that just exacerbates it even more. And so many of us live in this shell, throughout our careers. And by the time we eventually retire, do we even still know who we are or what we're about? Do we even still, where do we have peace? Where do we get to be ourselves? Where do we relax? Where do we just get to thrive, and not have to feel guilty for being brilliant or be punished for being brilliant? Where? Penny, if you'd like to get a copy of my book, you can go into my website, sihlebolani.com. Go into a tab that's titled Books, and if you scroll to the bottom, there's links to distributors that you can purchase from. Ownership can't thrive under big egos. You're right, Stable. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, Take a Lot is one of the distributors that is linked on my website. The name of the book is We Are the Ones We Need, The War on Black Professionals in Corporate South Africa. If you're into ebooks, it's also available on Kindle. The only place that boxes people by their grades, a 13, a 12, an 11, God forbid you're a 10. Elliot is a bitch ass, excuse my French beloveds. I feel like even that is an understatement. Wow, this guy. And after that, because usually when we leave a meeting, we'll all walk together, whoever it is that you're meeting with, you'll walk together and you'll kind of part ways at the escalators depending on which floor you're going to next. This guy left me, like he was gone. And I was just like, okay. And after that, he just struggled to, whenever he'd bump into me, he'd always act like he can't see me looking at the floor, like, he would struggle to keep eye contact. And, the more I went through this process and the braver and the more empowered I felt fighting back, the bolder I got too. So I would just be like, here. And he'd be the one now uncomfortable. And honestly, just that as a power play makes a big difference in shifting the dynamic when you're having an interaction with someone. Set up for failure. You're right, Sneh. That's exactly it. That's exactly what the intention was. So embarrassing. Why call the agency before informing you? And that was their strategy. Because Amanda would do the same thing. She would send an email to agency and not tell me. And then agency would have to come back and say, by the way, Amanda has sent us this email. Don't know why she's telling us and not you. But anyway, just thought we'd let you know. There was even one instance where Amanda's boss, our business unit director, Sandra, also... these women. So I had gone to our group our business unit CEO. I went to see her business manager about something. And while I was there, she said, oh, by the way, I've emailed Sandra about a publication that we'd like to assess on whether or not, it's something good for her to participate in. Can you please explore it? So I said, no problem, sure, because obviously that's my job. So I went upstairs to Sandra and I said, oh, I've just come back from Apira's office and her business manager has said that she sent you something to review. Please forward me the email so that I can look into it. Oh, don't worry, I've already sent it to agency. So I said, can you forward it to me anyway? So she sent it to me. I went to my desk, went through it, did my research, sent it back to her. Within 20 minutes, I had already responded. And Sandra responded to me and said, okay, thank you. Let's just wait and see what agency says first, and then we'll, respond to Apira. You're a threat to their egos, shame. Oh my God, guys. Egos make people dumb, honestly. Klanta, how were you coping in this environment, Sihle? Were you just rolling out of bed? What about your mental health? And also, how are you able to be a present mom with this happening? I'm triggered. I was literally on autopilot for the longest time. I won't even lie. I was just functioning. I wasn't eating well. I was very, very thin. It's funny, you get these Facebook memories and archives on Instagram, and it pops up pictures from like 2015. And it's so crazy to me to look at my pictures from back then, because my face is so gaunt, so thin, because all I did was live on coffee. I didn't eat. I didn't do anything that meant enjoying life outside of work. It was a horrible, horrible time. My mental health suffered tremendously. Even I had a great support system that always affirmed me and encouraged me and completely supported me throughout this journey. But you still have moments on your own. And you still have those moments where you doubt yourself. You still have those moments where you can't believe what is happening. And you can't understand why it's happening. And you can't make sense of why anybody would behave in this way. There are just so many questions that run through your mind all the time. And the more you go through it and the more new things pop up, the more disheartening it gets. The more it just feels like, what the hell am I going to do? Where am I going to go? What is going to happen to me? Because these people, if they continue like this, they could win on the basis of the fact that they have institutional support, which I don't. As a young black woman in corporate, I did not. I was on my own. They backed each other up no matter how fucked up they are. They were sticking together. And it was very hard to show up as a parent, I won't lie. Because there were so many days where I just don't have it in me. And my daughter got bare minimum because it just was what it was. And it was very hard to reconcile with that, but it's something that I've had to learn to forgive myself for, because, trauma is trauma, and we have to take the time to process it. And it helps when you have buffers in your family or in your life who are able to kind of step in when you can't. And my mom played a critical role in that aspect because she was able to step in and give my daughter time and attention when I just couldn't do it. Waitress says, thanks, Sihle, for these chats. Believe it or not, I'm going through chapter 7 thanks to that insecure boss of mine. That time I'm saving his ass, but instead he's concerned about his little ego. Document everything. Everything. No matter how tiny you think it is, document it, because the likelihood is that you're going to need it at some point. These people. It says maybe it was good that you were not part of a WhatsApp group. They probably gossiped about you. Oh, they had so many different groups. There was even a group for our business unit head and her direct reports. And I know for a fact that I was gossiped about a lot there because I really caused a lot of cack. I really was not the docile black. I was not the good black. So I know that there were very many conversations about me, but at some point you just don't care about any of that stuff. The only thing that I was really interested in is fighting the conversations that were in front of me. That's what I was interested in. Uguti, what you say behind my back, there's nothing I can do about that. In the words of Monica, my absolute favorite, if you have something to say to me, wait until you see me. Okay? True, look them in the eyes and say nothing. Yeah. People get very uncomfortable when you just keep quiet and look at them. People don't like quiet. They don't like silence. It makes them uncomfortable. And if they're guilty of something, they unravel during that quiet time. So embrace quiet moments when you're having confrontations as well. And also sometimes it just gives you room to think, breathe. Apiwe. Yeah, no, that's the name of the book, girl. That's not the real name. I ain't gonna get caught slipping. Yeah, egos really do make people dumb. It's scary though. 2014 is not 20 years ago. The system runs deep. Even today, nothing much has changed. Absolutely. I mean, I left 5 years ago, and I have people who are there at that same bank now, who I figured out what bank it was that I wrote about, who have said to me that it's even worse. They've gotten even more emboldened in their abuse of black professionals, and it's very clear that they have no interest in creating an environment that is safe, an environment that actually holds bullies accountable. And so if they want to be a hotbed for abusers and racists and misogynists and sexual harassers, then, there's nothing we can do about it, because then the leaders, the CEOs, the boards, they're okay with it. What can you do? You can just, I mean, the only thing you can do is decide to go to a different environment. But the job market is what it is right now. The economy is what it is right now. So it's not exactly an option for many, many people, unfortunately. Line of insanity, things you can and cannot control. Absolutely. It's so important to, I think it gets difficult, when you are in this environment, to determine what you should fight and what you shouldn't fight, what's worth it and what isn't. Because there are so many transgressions that take place in the workplace when you're a Black person. And if you're a Black woman, you add the sexual harassment and all of those things to the mix. And if you're a person living with disabilities, there's a whole other host of issues and offenses that exist within the workplace. So, it just feels like if you're not heteronormative and able-bodied and probably male, then you're going to have yourself a freaking hard time in the workplace. And what do you fight? Because you can't fight everything. Nobody can fight everything. And there's this expectation from people, and I see that a lot now. Recently we had, Instagram's gonna shut me down in like 3 minutes. We had this whole clicks Theresa May thing happening, and so that was like not this past week, the week before, I think. And obviously everybody was talking about it and all of that stuff was happening. And I never said anything. I never addressed it, never, didn't give any comments. And then last week, this week, around midweek, I drafted an opinion piece about it that I then shared on my social media platforms. And somebody commented and said, "Oh, okay, great. Like, I'm relieved. I was worried when I didn't see you saying anything." And I was just like, just because I speak up on certain issues doesn't mean that I'm going to speak up on every single issue that comes up under those themes. I am human. Okay, I have to practice self-care. I have to take care of myself. I have to take care of my emotions and my mental well-being. I cannot be commenting on every single thing. There are so many things that happen on social media that I don't agree with, or that irritate me, or that frustrate me, that I don't comment on because I simply do not have the capacity to engage on them. I'm one person. And I'm not here to save everybody just because I happen to do this kind of work. And the same applies within the workplace. We can't be expected to do everything, to answer every act of aggression, or to respond to every act of aggression. It's not humanly possible, especially if you're fighting it on your own. When you don't have a larger group that's standing with you, that is keeping you energized, that you trading places, and one person speaks, the next time you handle it, the next time somebody else takes the lead. If you don't have that kind of structure, guys, you can't expect people to be fighting every single battle all the time just because they happen to be outspoken on one particular thing. It's just not a real thing to have. Instead of waiting for me or whoever else to say something, how about you say something? How about that? Click situation reminded me of your bank. And I did reference them, right? Because I had an experience where a white senior marketing manager disagreed with me and a fellow Black colleague about what is appropriate for the Black market in South Africa. Because he has more experience and he knows his market. We don't. Tina, Black people, we don't know. And also there was an issue about them signing off on an ad where Black women were dancing for a bank account. Huh? Nah. I was like, yeah. Hello, South Africa. This is what happens when you disregard Black views in your organizations. And so when I saw the whole clicks Theresa May thing, I was like, I can imagine how many Black people are sitting there going, and they're like, no, We know this is the right thing to do. We know black women struggle with their hair. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me for another session. Thank you for all of your comments and your questions, and for engaging with me so beautifully every single week. You guys are the real deal. Before Instagram shuts me down, I'm gonna save this live. It's gonna be available on my IGTV if you only caught the last bit of it, or if you want to go back and watch it again, it'll be available for you. If there's anybody that you know that you think would benefit from watching it, they'll be able to access it on my IGTV. Which says they rather remove all images with people with hair in their ads. No, they rather remove the racism. The images are merely a symptom of racism. So we're not dealing with the problem. Sensitivity is my ass. Anna says, I hate it when I see such comments on people's timelines. What does that have to do with you? Why don't they say something instead of waiting to critique people's opinions? Exactly. Like, why are you waiting for me to say something? Well, no, where's your voice? Where's your opinion? You just want to comment and go, yeah. You say something. Why must I take the risks on my own all the time?